I'm doing was delays checking because for the first time in forever, I have every. Wait, gotta make sure it's on. Okay.
All right. This Shelton Metropolitan Park District meeting is called to order. Donna, would you do a roll call, please?
I will. Board Member Blush.
Here.
Board Clerk Stearns.
Here.
Board Member Gilmore.
Here.
Board Member Inesco.
Here.
Board Member Sherman.
Here.
Board Member Sapp.
Here.
And Board President Gutierrez.
Here. Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
All right, are we ready for a reading of the consent agenda?
Yes.
Yes. All right, Donna, will you please read the consent agenda?
Yes. Voucher numbered 111772 in the amount of $158,242.39. Minutes of the September 17th, 2024 business meeting.
Right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read? Do I have a second? First and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No, motion carries. All right, general public comments. Donna, do we have anyone signed up to make public comments?
No, we don't, Mr. President.
All right, we'll move on to the business agenda. And since there are no business agenda items this evening, we'll move on to the public hearing. Finance Director Mike Givens has information about the 2025 preliminary budget.
Thank you, President and members of the board. We're pleased to present first look at the 2025 budget for Shelton Metropolitan Park District. I think it speaks for everyone that we're very fortunate to have the park district that funds our parks and recreation programs for the city of Shelton. So just as a review for everyone, this is a separate junior taxing district. It is authorized to collect property taxes and then funds the parks and rec programs for the city. We're presenting a budget that does rely on some ending fund balance. So you'll notice the total revenue that we're projecting for 2025 is $639,475. That's primarily property taxes. Our expenses we're estimating at $894,698. So we're drawing the cash balance down for a total of $468,535 to operate our parks and rec programs for the year. We do offset that revenue a little bit on our budget through some fees that participants pay, particularly for recreation programs. So we're estimating about $18,000 in revenue that comes into the general fund that then helps offset that in the Parks District. So we collect that for various activities. I won't speak on that too much since I'm not as knowledgeable about what folks are paying for, but for the Winter League basketball and so forth. But that's the presentation. We're happy to answer any questions that the board has about the Park District and its operations. You know that you approve the quarterly payments, so we run the most expenses and pay our staff through the city budget, and then SMPD reimburses the city. So it's a more economical way to manage the district through the city operation.
All right, public testimony. Is there anyone signed for public testimony, Donna?
There is not, Mr. President.
All right, do we have a motion?
I move to forward the 2025 budget resolution, November 19th special SMPD meeting for further consideration. Action to allow the public another opportunity to comment on the resolution under consideration.
All right,
Second.
we have a first and a second. Do we have any comments the board members want to make? We have a first and a second to forward the 2025 budget resolution to the November 19th SMPD meeting for the further consideration, action, and to allow another public opportunity to comment on the resolution under consideration. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, number two, this public hearing is closed and we're opening another public hearing. Now Mike Given has information for us about the 2025 ad valorem taxes.
So that's the legal term for the property tax levy that is the primary source of revenue, as I mentioned, for the Parks District. We have essentially prepared this, as you saw, a budget that relies on ending fund balance. So this doesn't in total fund the Park District. We do a lot of planning. Jordan, of course, is involved in that, but to try to make sure that we're putting aside money for different projects and then funding the operations that are ongoing. We have preliminary numbers right now, and that's what I'm sharing on screen and that were in packet. We should have by the middle of the month in our final adoption of this, firm numbers on new construction and the assessed value from the Mason County Assessor's Office. But we're calculating this at a regular property tax levy at $626,717.35. It's the 1% increase on the highest lawful levy. You'll notice our budget was slightly higher than that, and that's to allow capacity to collect past year's taxes due from properties that might owe. And then we have a little bit of investment interest that also comes into the fund. So this, again, is the primary source of revenue for the Parks District. Again, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Don, is there any public testimony?
No, there isn't, Mr. President.
Okay, board, we have a motion.
I move that we forward resolution number SMPD 41-0924 to November 19th, 2024 SMPD agenda for further consideration.
Okay, well, first and a second, any of the board members have any comments? Nope, we have a first and a second to move the resolution forward, SMP 41-0924 to the November 19th, 2024 SMPD agenda for further consideration. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. This public hearing is closed and we will resume the special meeting. We're back to the action agenda. And there are no action items this evening, but we do have an administration report. And Parks and Recreation Supervisor Jordan is here with park updates for us.
Thank you, board. Couple updates for you. Just the last couple months, Northcliffe got a new paved path from the Northcliffe side all the way up to the playground, which connects to the ADA ramp, which is great. And then as soon as we get a window of some dry weather, we're gonna get 2 new benches put up there. We'll just have them under the tree and move the picnic table that's up there to the other side. We did get bright yellow to match the playground, so going with yellow theme for that park, which is great. Callahan, we got 2 new paved ADA parking stalls right at the entrance, which has been a need up there for a very long time, so that's great that we have 2 up there officially now. Working on getting the signage and bumpers in place, but those are already paved and ready to go. And then, right around the corner, we got youth basketball registration, which is open right now. That will start after the Thanksgiving holiday. So if you know anybody from 2nd to 6th grade who's interested, have them sign up. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Jordan?
Do we have any scholarships for the basketballs?
Yeah, we do a youth scholarship, we cover 50% of the fee.
It's funded through donations. Jordan just applied for funding through the Squaxin Tribe to help support that scholarship program, and they were kind enough to fund the scholarship program through a grant, so it helps support those that may not be able to afford, or at least offset some of the costs of those recreation programs.
It's $80 a kid. And the scholarship form you can either get through me or us on the website.
Thank you, Jordan. All right. The next SMPD meeting is on November 19th at 5:45 PM. And this meeting is adjourned at 5:54 PM.
You help about.
Yeah. But not.
No, I don't think so.
No, I know, it's not. I have to thank you. I asked if we could. Without the other 8, whereas. It's like 1.
Yeah.
I mean, you can read those numbers without long.
I just wanted to.
I was signed 1, so I'm hoping.
It's 2 for you.
Ah, that's too sweet.
There you go.
Yells.
Well, the glory of sitting as the chair, right? Sign your name twice. You get to use 2 different pens, right?
Right, where I-
And you see the big wig, probably don't do that way. They use separate pen every time, and then hang it out, and then one pen. But even,
This far off the back.
finish your entire- pens. That's one thing I tell you. So like sign their first name and switch the pen out, sign their second name, so get the pen, whatever bill or sponsor or submit a cause, so I can have the pen somewhere else and sign. Governor, president.
Words, there's red issues. I mean, yeah, you gotta read them.
Not gonna be- Yeah, exactly.
Good point. Uh-huh.
Lucky you get a pen here. Bring your own. Go down to the bank.
Where at? You know, it's like,
Exactly. Who's down to sit down? Insula had those pens. Honestly, when I was charging for Kiwanis, I always take one, whatever's in there. Now I don't go there anymore. I always like the other pens were.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Good laying around, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, thank you.
No.
We've got an extra battery back. Is it a double or triple?
They said they have to be in cost. So.
It's just an app, or a widget or whatever.
Yeah.
Arkansas.
Oh.
Where's this on the agenda again? All right, let's pull that up.
We're gonna add it to after general public comment.
Okay, so right before we get into the master fee schedule.
Yes.
Okay.
No. Ready.
Good evening. Welcome to the council meeting for November 5th, 2024. Anyone in the audience is amplifying headphones, please raise your hand. Not seeing anybody out there. We'll move on. Let's rise for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Donna, can you do a roll call, please?
Councilmember Blush. Councilmember Stearns. Councilmember Gilmore.
Here.
Mayor Nesco.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Sherman.
Here.
Councilmember Sapp.
Here.
And Councilmember Gutierrez.
Here.
Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
Does the council have any late changes to the agenda? We are going to add the green light proclamation and a little bit later, and Deputy Mayor Sherman is going to read that for us. So we'll move on. Does the council have any board reports to share? All right. Are we ready for reading the consent agenda?
Yes.
Donna, will you please read the consent agenda?
I will. I'm going to take a deep breath first. Warrants numbered 111,735 through 111,736 in the amount of $52,931.31. Vouchers numbered 111,737 through 111,771 and EFT payment numbers 729 through 743 in the total amount of $357,951.84. Vouchers numbered 111,779 through 111,824 and EFT payment numbers 744 through 759 in the total amount of $307,905.02. Vouchers numbered 111,838 through 111,860. EFT payment numbers 760 through 772 in the total amount of $68,694.67. And bank draft numbers DFT 0001725 DFT 0001737 through DFT 0001769 in the total amount of $750,947.15. Payroll warrants numbered 4004 and 13550 through 13648. Warrants 111825 through 111836 in the amount of $371,780.28. Minutes from the business meeting of September 3rd, 2024, and business meeting of September 17th, 2024.
Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
All right, we have a motion and a second to move the consent agenda as read. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And now the general public comment. The council invites the public to make comments on matters of city business. Comments will be made to the entire council, not individual council members. Please refrain from any personal disrespectful remarks that create disruption of the meeting. If unreasonable disruptive conduct continue to be asked to leave the meeting. Donna, inside of public comment.
We don't have anyone for in-person comments. Let me look at the Zoom list here. I don't see anyone with their hand raised, Mr. Mayor.
We're now at the presentation for the Green Light Proclamation. Deputy Mayor.
City of Shelton Operation Green Light for Veterans, November 4 through 11. Whereas the residents of the city of Shelton have great respect, admiration, and the utmost gratitude for all of the men and women who have selflessly served our country and this community in the armed forces. And whereas the contributions and sacrifices of the men and women who have served in the armed forces have been vital in maintaining the freedoms and the way of life enjoyed by our citizens. And whereas the city of Shelton seeks to honor these individuals who have paid the high price for freedom by placing themselves in harm's way for the good of all. And whereas veterans continue to serve our community in the American Legion, veterans of foreign wars, religious and civil service groups, and whereas approximately 200,000 service members transition to civilian communities annually, and whereas an estimated 20% increase of service members will transition to civilian life in the near future, and whereas studies indicate 44 to 72% of service members experience high levels of stress during transition from military to civilian life, and whereas active military service members transitioning from military service are at high risk for suicide during their first year after military service. And whereas the city of Shelton appreciates the sacrifices of our United States military personnel and believes specific recognition should be granted. Therefore, it be resolved with designation as a green light for veterans. The city of Shelton hereby declares November 4 through 11 as a time to salute and honor the service and sacrifice of our men and women in uniform transitioning from active service. Therefore, be it further resolved that in observance of Operation Green Light, the city of Shelton encourages its citizens in patriotic tradition to recognize the importance of honoring all those who have made immeasurable sacrifices to preserve freedom by displaying a green light in the window of their place of business or residence. Signed this 5th day of November, 2024 in Shelton, Washington by our mayor, Eric Neska.
Thank you, Councilman Sherman. As we have two veterans on our board, Councilmember Gilmore and Councilmember Sherman are veterans. Thank you for your service. Right.
Mr. Mayor, if you will recognize that we have our green lights placed out of the entrance. I
Yes.
think most people saw it tonight. Now that it's dark, when we're showing up here at 5:30 in the evening. Technically, the Operation Green Light wants us to recognize veterans by having those lights up through November 11th. We traditionally place those throughout the month of November, so you'll see those green lights up at the front of the building throughout the month of November.
Okay. Anybody have anything?
I just wanted to recognize former Councilmember McDowell, who gave me, I think, gave the whole council green lights last year. So thank you very much. Even though she's not here.
Our only business item is resolution to update the master fee schedule. Finance Director Mike Given has details for us.
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. We're bringing you the master fee schedule as kind of that first document as we lead into the 2025 budget discussion. Much of the master fee schedule impacts the budget in various funds. So I'm here tonight to take you through it pretty much page by page. So I have it on screen for members of the audience and those online, and I know you had it in packet. So we've made a few changes. On page 1, we moved the table of contents around a bit to move those departments under or those sections under the departments where they correspond. So that was really the changes you see. We bring you this track change version so you can see what it was and what it is proposed to be in the new resolution. So I'll move on to page 2. Some of the changes here include some wording clarifications, and under Civic Center rental increases to better cover our costs for providing the rental space. You'll notice throughout in some places we had language that said fine, and since this is a fee schedule, we've changed that to fee. So those are the changes really that cover pages 2 and 3. It's mostly wording, and then, as I mentioned, some changes, some slight adjustments to fees to better recoup our costs. Okay, on page 4, the new fee for an original concealed pistol license, or CPL, will be $48 in 2025. So that's probably one of the few places where a fee went down, but that's given to us through the FBI and mandated that way. So that's the change there for a weapons permit. On page, I'm going to skip ahead to page 6 now. Our change here is some cleanup of language, but nothing to the fees. On to page 8. We had a number of pages here, or changes here on this page, new amounts for building permits. I think we're happy to answer questions if you want as we go, or at the end, whatever you would like, Mr. Mayor.
We have department directors and may want clarification for council.
Some of this, I'm just the organizer of information, so I don't always know the background of it. The change under Windows, I think, is just to make it one amount. It was difficult in our system to sometimes get that permitting amount in their parties. Okay, I can skip ahead now. There weren't many changes. I'm going to go up to page 15, and under Public Works, we had some clarifying language under right of way. I'm not making everybody dizzy scrolling through this. So that is the changes here, adding some language and then just clarifying that fee underneath there. Page 16, we have some includes clarifying language changes in places. As I mentioned, we noted we had it worded as fine, and we're changing that to fee since this is a fee schedule. There are some updates for that. The traffic impact fee is updated and attached as an attachment to the fee schedule.
And as I discussed previously with a few council members, that traffic impact being some of the GFCs by code, we reference an inflationary increase so we're not just trying to come up with an increase on an annual basis. So we actually reference a price in later. Jay, is it the Seattle Bremerton?
Seattle
CPI?
Construction Cost Index for the traffic impact fees.
Yeah. So you'll see that reference to that indicator on an annual basis by code.
And as I mentioned there, midway, the traffic impact fee is referenced in attachment B, which was in the packet and will have posted as well once final adoption of the fee schedule happens. I should have mentioned this goes into effect January 1st and covers the fiscal year. So January 1st through December 31st, 2025. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to page 17. So in the past, we've listed our water and sewer rates in multiple years. That proved to be a bit confusing for everyone because we had past years, the current year, and future years. So we're deleting those old schedules. So you'll see, I'm gonna just scroll ahead to show you that. This is a deleted table. So we used to show multiple years. We're just presenting you the year you're adopting for now. So this starts with the sewer rates, the sewer service monthly charges. I think that'll make it a little bit less confusing. So the table starting on page 17 begins with monthly sewer rates, and then on page 18 deletes the old table as I showed you. The rates for 2025 include a 4.5% monthly sewer rate increase. This is based on the FCS group study that was conducted back in 2023. So the increases are forecast to generate the revenue needed to fully fund both the water and sewer utilities on a standalone basis, considering operating and maintenance expenditures as well as the projects that you've been made aware of through study session and through really many of the business meetings where you're authorizing expenditures on those capital projects. And a little bit later in the budget presentation for 2025, we'll reference more of those. So that's the proposal for the sewer amount.
But that was all approved. We've already approved those rate increases, correct? And this is just housekeeping.
You'll approve the 2025 rate by adopting this fee
It
schedule.
essentially memorializes it within the fee schedule.
Okay, we did a 4-year
Yeah.
already, okay. We're not going up from there, we're just.
Correct.
House-
Yes.
Correct. Not up from there.
Yes.
So I'm gonna scroll ahead. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me. I'm gonna go up to page 21 because we had an error on the water system connection GFC. So these all increase by 1%. This one is a typo and we'll make sure it's changed. It's not 3,300. It's a 1% increase on $3,000. So that's $3,030, not 3,300. We'll correct that, as I said, for final, when you consider this as for final adoption on the 19th. So that it will be one change there. It's a decrease in what we have printed here.
Just for fun, I'm gonna ask Jay about the different meter sizes. What's the purpose of from a 3/4 all the way to an 8-inch meter size? What is that? I mean, that's a bit, 8 inches, pretty big meter, right?
Yeah, so Mayor Nisco, Jay Harrison, Public Works Director. The GFC's increased by meter size, because that's the impact that meter would have on the system. So in this case, it's water. So if you put in like a 2 or 3 inch meter, a bunch more fixtures are obviously serving the building with water. And so the capacity charge for this would be the wells, the reservoirs, the pipelines that are in place or that are needed in the future. So the GFC is a development charge, right? So the new building goes in, they have a large impact on the system. They're paying either the existing infrastructure costs that we already have in place or the future costs that is in the water comprehensive plan in this.
No, I got that. I was curious
I
about
want to
that.
make sure the rest of the council understood what a GFC is. So it does go up proportionally with the greater use.
Okay.
So
And
3/4 meters for single family home,
8-inch meters and large industrial use.
large industrial.
Primarily, you're talking something that uses a heck of a lot of water for cooling, some manufacturing process that uses a lot of water for cooling or to that extent. I don't know if we have any in the system right now, do we?
The largest meter we have is 6
Yeah.
inch.
Yeah,
and
sounds right.
I'm pretty sure that's SP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I was really just curious about that, sorry. Anybody else, any questions about the meter sizes? Okay. Thank you, Jay. You're welcome.
And then towards the bottom of page 21 are the water rates, and this is the same presentation we're making. We're taking it to just 1 year's rates so that it's not as confusing in what we're presenting. The water service monthly charges under Schedule 1 are a 14% increase over 2024 rates. Again, this is the rate forecast through the professional study we had conducted back in 2023. And I can tell you, as we're going through our annual audit right now, they're very careful to make sure that we're keeping the funds isolated in here. And I can assure you that water rates go into the water fund, sewer rates into the sewer fund, storm rates into the storm fund, and fund those specific projects. I'm going to scroll down and show you where we're removing the table that shows the multiple years. Again, this is, I think, in particular with water rates, it was confusing to our users of this schedule. You know, it was easy to misread because you would assume the top rate is the most, or the top table is the most current. So I think it's will be clearer to both our staff and our users if we just have the one adopted rate in there per year. And then on page, this again is deleting the old table down here. And on page 25, we had just a couple of wording changes where we called it a fine for unauthorized connection. And it's a fee for either an unauthorized connection or for tampering with a water meter or cutting off the lock. And that brings us to the end of the fee schedule. If you'd like us to answer any questions, we're all here for that.
Donna, is anyone sign up for public comment?
No, we don't, Mr. Mayor.
Where are we? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we forward resolution number 1348-0924 to the action agenda to the November 19th, 2024 council meeting for further consideration.
All right, any other comments or questions? Again, the increases on the sewer and the water and the storm are already approved by the council, and we're just housekeeping them into the master fee schedule. Nothing is, we're not approving any more raises today.
And previously, we captured those within the municipal code, and that was really confusing because you had to potentially go into the code, and as you know, it's quite extensive, and find a fee located there, and that's why they've been translated into the fee schedule now. And we're only capturing the current year within that yearly fee schedule, so it's more transparent and hopefully easy enough for individuals and staff, frankly, to find what they need to find that information.
So you are adopting rates for next year at an increase, but
We already approved those.
Yes.
On a 4-year schedule, I believe. Yeah.
but we bring it to you annually in the fee schedule for consideration.
All right, any other questions? We have a motion and a second to move forward resolution number 1348-0924 to the act agenda, November 19th, 2024. For further consideration, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Right. We're recessing from a regular meeting and in a public hearing. Our first item is an ordinance related to the 2025 budget. Finance Director Mike Givens has information for us.
All right, we'll just continue right on into more talk of money. The 2025 budget is truly a monumental effort that involves a lot of people. I think of this as our roadmap and strategic plan for the coming fiscal year that you'll consider. We present it here to you and our public to operate the city of Shelton in 2025. It's a great deal of work on everyone's part, and I think you'll see as we go through this. And I plan to spend a good amount of time on this. I know spent time in study session, but it's important that you understand it and have an opportunity to ask us questions. And certainly we have everyone here, as Mark mentioned, in the form of department directors who can answer your questions. So we lead into the budget with a message from City Manager Mark Ziegler. It's there for everyone to see. And then we get into the exhibits, which lay out the budget amounts. I do want to apologize. In your briefing there, it indicated a slightly less amount on the total budget. We made some last minute changes on this, and so this is the correct amount. You'll be considering a budget citywide of $45,902,596. That's across all of our funds. This summarizes the expenditures fund by fund throughout the city. I'm gonna go to the exhibit B to spend just a few minutes here. This highlights our estimated beginning fund balance. So again, this is what we're estimating as we prepare the budget. This may change slightly on some of the funds, but we're working really hard to make sure this is pretty darn close. We then have the column with proposed revenue, proposed expenditures, and then a proposed ending fund balance, the dollar change and the percent change. So just to draw your attention to this, what we're proposing to you in budget is beginning with a fund balance total across all city funds of 23.5 million roughly. We're drawing that down just over 5 million to 18 million at the end of 2025. Some of this is due to the projects we have in our capital funds, which, as a reminder, we very fastidiously put money aside in those capital funds to save, if you will, for projects that are going to happen. But I do want to draw your attention to the general fund. That's the top line at on this table. So we're estimating we'll begin the year at just over 6.1 million. We have an estimated revenue of 15.7 million and expenses of 16.8 million. So as we talked with you in August at our study session, and you gave us direction to prepare a budget that utilizes some of that ending fund balance to the amount of just over $1,068,000. So I'm bringing that up now. The city manager and I have talked. We're going to be coming back to you pretty early on in 2025 to start planning for 2026, because we're using that ending fund balance for some ongoing expenses. And as I mentioned in August, and I think some of you shared this, we're in I don't want to say difficult position, but a position of making a decision here that we have some ending fund balance. It doesn't make a lot of sense to tell our community we're going to make cuts when we have that ending fund balance. We're going to have to make some important decisions going forward about how we balance that budget. So we'll be looking really, I think, at that first quarter. Where do our revenues and expenditures, what do they look like? I'm pretty conservative on the estimate of revenue, but there's not much to change there. And we'll look at that in a little bit more detail. Did you want to say anything, Mark, about kind of our planning?
Yeah, I think that as Mike indicated, this is a dynamic process. We have to follow it, maintain and manage as best we can. I appreciate the council's support in at least using some of those funds to maintain the services that we have. Our priorities are public safety, our assets, and maintaining a staffing level that's appropriate for our community. We still haven't backfilled all the positions that were eliminated back in 2023. We're working on that slowly, hopefully, but again, there's some decisions to make in 2025. So we don't end up in a position like we were in 2023. And so as diligent as we can be in engaging the council early and often, I think that we'll be able to navigate this and be able to make some strategic decisions to best meet our community's needs.
And that ending fund balance being where it is, that was, I think, an example of the city being really good stewards of the public's funds to make sure that we had a good idea of where our expenditures were going to fall, and really land. I think jail costs are a good example of that. We didn't know back in 2022 exactly where they'd be in 2023. We have a better idea of that now. And I think overall, that savings is being invested back in our community. But that $1,068,000 is one-time money, if you will. We always hope, or I'll tell you from a finance perspective, we plan for underspending somewhere in the area of 2 to 4%. And that's pretty natural. We can't overspend from your authority. So there's some natural underspending, and it occurs, you know, if a person vacates a position, we can't always fill it immediately. Projects just don't happen as quickly or as much as we predict. So there's some underspending, and that's often going to happen. I think the presentation on this 2025 budget, though, we have a lot happening in there. It's fully funding all of the current services. I don't expect it to be as underspent as we may have seen this year, or frankly, last year when we had to make the cutbacks. So that's the presentation on across our funds. I can already tell you, we'll have a little bit of a different presentation for your final adoption, and I apologize for that, but there've been a couple of changes, and I'll highlight those as we go. I wish I could tell you the revenue was changing and going up, but that's, I can't tell you that. So this is our summary of,
One question.
yes,
The ending on the general fund, the ending line, fund balance of 5,059,170. That's gonna be the beginning, proposed beginning for 26, right?
correct.
Okay, and
That is, and
so,
that
and how much of that would be the 20% reserve?
a little over 3.8, 3.6 million, somewhere in there.
So we're estimating that we're gonna start out with one-time money again for 26.
Potentially, yeah, correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Which helps us a bit in our plan.
Did this include the money for the enterprise fund, for enterprise cars? It does.
There's also opioid settlement funds in
Yes.
that, in the balance that are earmarked, if you will, or to have to be dedicated to programs that are specific to opioid reduction treatment services that we have not allocated at this point, which we're doing a little more research on and trying to find avenues where we can expend those funds. As most of you know, the first allocation we received in settlement funds were transferred to Mason County. Those haven't been expended yet. So we've been holding on to those, waiting for a plan from Mason County Public Health. If there's not a plan there, we certainly would bring some options forward to council where those would be expended through other avenues.
And before I leave this page, I will go through some parts of this. I know this can be a little bit daunting to folks who don't work with the city budget all the time. We have a number of funds here. The general fund and street fund, and then the water sewer storm funds we talk about a lot. The other funds are there for specific purposes. We're happy to answer any questions. We'll be going through some of them. You have a study session next Tuesday to talk in more detail about the Transportation Benefit District. We shorten that sometimes to say TBD. That, of course, supports our street maintenance and operations. The sales tax that is collected for that goes straight into the street fund. And that's where that money really, we couldn't operate streets without it. So we'll bug for your study session next Tuesday. FTE, you'll notice here, we're tracking the FTE across all departments. I know you have an interest in making sure where staffing levels are. I can talk to you a little bit about some of this. You'll notice we increased just about 1.0 FTE in the general fund. That's an additional custodial position that was reduced back in 2023. So that's the addition there. We did some reorganizing in finance. I was able to this year add back that full-time customer service rep. We reduced the accounting assistant, so that netted in a 0.50 savings. We'd added back the potential for a half-time customer service rep. It was a real strain on the other staff up there, so we just made that a full-time position. So that's the 0.5 savings in finance. It wasn't the elimination of any employees. It was a position that was vacant. And then in the other city funds, you'll notice they're holding about steady as well. So our grand total for the city is that 1.0 FTE will be at 100.53 FTEs. That doesn't count our temporary staff, but those are regular benefited employees. businesses across the city. All right, so I'm gonna dive into a little bit more on the general fund. Our proposed budget for 2025, taxes, include everything from our property taxes, sales taxes, and B&O tax. I think, as you know, we've talked about this a bit. I was pretty conservative since we increased that rate. I'm more confident in what I'm seeing coming in this year, so I was able to, with a little bit more assurance, budget that up. It's not quite double what we collected back in 2023, but we're approaching that level of B&O tax. So that's good news. But this revenue, it just doesn't change much. You'll notice that our budget for 2024 and our year-end estimate are apart about $600,000. And that's largely due to the monies we've gotten in some grants that we weren't expecting, we didn't budget for. Investment interest has come back higher. As Mark mentioned, we've gotten the opioid settlement. We were notified we'll be getting a bit more even this year or the first part of next year. So that's that variance between the budget and the estimate. We can't overspend your authority. We can receive more revenue than you budget for without any problem on that. So, you know, part of the ending fund balance is just simply we got more revenue than we planned. I should mention also there's some more activity with the development. So the general fund has seen some more permit revenue, but largely that's the reason for that increase in revenue. We then break it down by department. So expenditures by department, you can take a look at these. This is the summary level. A couple of things I wanted to mention because as city manager mentioned, one of the focus for you and us as a city is public safety. Wanted to take just a moment because when we think about public safety, I know we think about the police. We also contract with Central Mason Fire. And so that contract for fire and EMS, our jail services, our public defense and police totals over $8 million, or for 2025 is the equivalent of 48% of the general fund budget. So that's our really devotion of funds towards all those public safety activities that occur in the city of Shelton. So again, this is our estimate of expenditures. I'm going to take you down into a little bit more detail here. I think this is a little bit easier to understand when we're talking about taxes, the property taxes. We're estimating that increase at just a little bit over $50,000, much like the Metropolitan Park District. We don't have firm numbers back yet, but we'll have those for the final adoption on November 19th. Sales and use tax, you'll notice it just doesn't change a whole lot. It stays pretty consistent for us in the city. The B&O tax, I'm bringing that up to $1,427,732. So if you compare that to back in 2023, our budget was just over $802,000. That's helping the general fund a lot. But as you notice, we're still, our costs are higher. Our cost to employ people, it just never goes down, and professional service contracts and supplies are higher. The city's feeling it just like all of us are feeling it when we go out and shop. So that's the revenue sources for the general fund in some detail.
And B&O tax, like the sales tax, you know, can be affected by the economy.
Certainly.
Kind of going spoiling. So it's just something that probably gotta be careful of as well, because we're going up, we're almost doubling it right now, so that's not a little bit too high.
No, our year-end estimate, you'll notice, is at 1.3 million. We have a number of businesses who will pay annually and we'll get that revenue in January. And so if anything, I'm probably still a little bit on the conservative side. But again, I'd rather be there and have us over realize it than expect more and then we're in a cutting position. So I think I'm probably about at the sweet spot. We might be able to bump that up a little bit for 2026, but we'll just have to see what we get kind of in that first quarter will tell us pretty well. So January of this year, January of 2024, those annual filers were paying based on that former B&O tax rate. So this January of 2025, they'll be paying on that increased rate.
Yeah, I was worried it was a little bit high, not low.
I don't think it is.
I just know that was a problem a couple of years ago in our budget, because board prices dropped and B&O dropped in half and.
Yeah, we're just conservative. I think we're reasonably conservative and watching this as much as we can. Mike's keeping an eye on it on a monthly basis for those that pay monthly and quarterly and tracking actuals right now. Certainly, yes, the economy can change.
Right.
The good thing is, even when our downturns, sales tax is really predictable here in the city of Shelton. We have basic services. There's not a lot of large discretionary expenditures, cars, boats, things like that, so you don't see those big peaks and valleys that you might see in other cities. Now, that's good in downtimes necessarily because you might have realized that before, but in good times when people have those discretionary funds, we're not realizing that sales tax at the same time. So you can look at it both ways. There's predictability, but also when those discretionary funds are available for the general public, they're not spending those in the city of Shelton.
So the B&O tax rate doubled effective January 1st, 2024. I didn't double the revenue and I'm still not there yet. So I think this conservative estimate is probably about where we'll land. I think I've shared it in monthly financial reports. We had some lag in some of our larger businesses catching up with that higher rate. So we started out slower, we've caught up now. And that's why our year-end estimate is pretty much right at the budget. We're estimating 1,327,000 budgets at 1,341,000. And we may actually hit that more close. It's where we're estimating it as we prepare the budget. So that's I guess the last thing I would just point out, our dollar change in revenue, 25 over 24 is just $322,000. So we don't see a lot of fluctuation in that. So one of the other things, if development happens more, that also gives us more information as we're preparing future years' budget. There, sometimes it's one-time money, sometimes it may be some ongoing increases, but we want to measure that very carefully and conservatively to make sure, again, we're not overstating our revenues, expecting more than we're going to get. If we get more, we can make those decisions down the road as we present future budgets.
Do you see a little bit between the other revenue and miscellaneous revenue?
Certainly, I know those are a little bit confusing. Miscellaneous revenue contains things like investment interest, things that don't categorize as easily. They're typically not paid as taxes. They're those other kinds of things we get. Don's here. Do you know off the top of your head what that 52,000 and other is? Don's our budget and grants coordinator.
Look, I think it's hotel gambling taxes.
Okay, under other.
Other, yeah.
Okay,
No, this is other tax.
thank you. And we can, I'm happy to send Mark and he can show you kind of the breakdown in those. It's interesting. I know I'm financy, but we'll send it to you so you can see, because it does, I think, tell a lot about also what the state sends us in some of those lines.
Anyway, we get like a little bit of marijuana tax and we get a little
Correct.
bit of gas tax, right?
Liquor support, quite a bit.
That's in those miscellaneous categories probably.
So the rest of the budget breaks down, and I'm not necessarily going to stop on each page. We're happy to talk about anything you have. We lead off with one of our more important departments, that of city clerk. You'll see oftentimes, so just to kind of give you the highlight here, we're giving you a department summary, some budget highlights. Maybe where there's a change, oftentimes it's due to wage and benefit increases that are pretty customary. Either they're through a collective bargaining agreement or what we're recommending for non-represented staff. So we summarize that increase. We then cover the different categories in that division. So for the city clerk, it's some of the employee and associated costs, as well as election costs and then reporting costs. So that's kind of what we're covering with the division, and then by category, wages, benefits, supplies, equipment, and then service charges. Often in service, in most departments, that'll be some professional service contracts. We'll look at that in a department that maybe has a little bit more. We show you again by department, the specific staffing that is there, and then as a percent of the general fund, what each department represents. City council is on here. So for your, the costs of city council, the city manager, I'll pause here just to highlight, because I think sometimes it might be a little bit deceiving or confusing what we budget by each category. So under the city manager, it's not just the city manager and associated staff salaries. It's for the jail contract. That's the detention and corrections line, legal. So that covers not only our city attorney that we contract with, but our prosecutor and defense contracts in there. And then back in some reorganizations and cost cutting, human resources and risk management was moved under the city manager effective 2024. So all of those things compose the city manager's budget. And then again, the staffing for that department. So community and economic development. I was given, I think I wrote this down right, but the city manager's here to help me cover this. So we did not include something in budget. We'll be bringing this back for the final, for your final consideration. So there will be an increase. We budgeted on the revenue side, $62,500 on a Department of Commerce grant in 2024 that assists with the comprehensive plan. We have that budgeted in 2025, but there are some associated expenses that were not included here. So this reduction on the line for community development shows a reduction of 12.1%. That's the one-time cost, but it wasn't included back in for next year because the comprehensive plan is continuing. So there will be costs for the comprehensive plan, and we also received a climate grant.
Climate resiliency grant.
Climate
Yes,
resiliency
of $150,000 as well. So that project, as you know, continues through the funds have to be expended, at least for the comp plan, by the end of June 2025. The state gave us a 6-month extension to complete our comprehensive plan through the end of 2025, but they didn't extend the funding opportunity. So we anticipate at least having those funds expended by that time. So we need to recognize that within the 2025 budget.
So that'll be a couple of changes you'll see, and I'll highlight them on the 19th briefly and make sure it's covered in briefing. You'll notice we increased the estimate for expenses on animal control. So our year-end estimate is at $255,000. Again, that's what we're estimating in finance. We increased the budget by $56,501 to better capture the costs of that. You know, we have to have staffing there 7 days a week. The supplies and professional services, that's where we charge for veterinary care, are increasing. That's that. category. Again, it covers the staffing for community and economic development that includes code enforcement and animal control. And these are regular staff positions. We also have some temporary staff that are budgeted but not shown as FTE because they're not benefited regular positions. I've talked a little bit about the finance department in the reduction in staffing in 2024, similar to HR and risk moving to the city manager. IT moved under finance, and so that staffing level is there. We added some budget, about $53,000 increase to IT. In 2020, we purchased a number of laptops. That was kind of coordination with the pandemic beginning. Those are reaching end of life. Unfortunately, as that would be, we bought a number of them. So now a number of them are needing to be replaced. And we're trying to do that as cost effectively as possible. If a laptop's needed, we replace it with a laptop, but if not, we replace it with something more cost effective. But that's what that really largest increase in finance and IT is. The FTE reduces by half. Fire and EMS. So when we talk in a little bit about the property tax levy, there's a separate one for EMS services. Really, that is just passed on to Central Mason Fire for EMS services. And then we budget for the fire contract. So there's really two pieces to this. For 2025, that budget is just over $2.6 million. That does include the facilities cost because, as we've talked about before, the city owns the fire station in town. So that's the related cost to ensure that building, repair and maintenance, those sorts of things. And then municipal court. They had taken some reductions under particularly supplies during our 2023 reduction. They're going to a new court system, computer system, and so we're adding some of that back because they'll have some scanning that is mandated by state courts that they'll have to do. FTE doesn't make a change in municipal court. Non-departmental, not to make this more confusing than it has to be, but and this should say the 2025 budget, it has some payments that we transfer into this to make for bonds when we upgraded the fire station. We have to make some transfers in for the payroll and benefits fund, the firefighters pension fund, and then $400,000 transfer for street operations that the general fund will be making. So all of those are captured in this kind of non-departmental area since it doesn't really fit in anything else. Parks, Rec, and Facilities. As we mentioned when we had the budget hearing for Shelton Metropolitan Park District, I think, we couldn't do this without the support of our park district. So this covers all of that kind of activity along with our facility services. So everything that it costs to really operate our facilities, this building, custodial, our maintenance staff, repairs and maintenance. We have contracts to service our fire sprinkler systems to our elevators. So all of those have to be maintained. And that's in our owned building. So that's not only what you might think of as the civic center, it also includes the library, the museum, and the fire station. Am I missing anything that's a little bit?
Grounds, landscaping and grounds, yeah.
So that includes some increases there that aren't just personnel related, but also in some cases, some slight increases for supplies that we're having in both parks and facilities. Police. The budget maintains police staffing levels for 2025. I know they have a couple of vacancies that they're excited about and looking towards filling in the coming months. The budget includes replacement of police vehicles. So at our next council meeting, we'll also be bringing you a consideration, a contract with Enterprise Fleet Management, but we budgeted in here the replacement of 5 police vehicles in 2025. And I can tell you, I know they're looking at our oldest, highest mileage vehicles. We're spending a lot to repair those. Not the equivalent right now of what the lease payments will be, but having newer vehicles should take and reduce some of the pressure on that repair and maintenance line that we're having with our older vehicles. The budget also includes some additional training, taser replacement, and some other equipment updates and replacement. So we're trying to make sure that we're funding those ongoing costs of public safety, as was one of your focus points, as well as I know for our community. We kind of categorize the police down from administration, records, investigations. The largest line, of course, is for our patrol. And then we break out training. So when you look at training, we had a pretty low budget when you consider what we expect of our officers, what's mandated by law, and when we have a new officer, the amount of money that we have to pay for the training. So that $85,000 is still, as a percent of budget, pretty low. It looks like a large increase, but as a percent of the total, it's really not representing a high amount. And again, if you have questions on any of this, feel free to ask. I can turn to my colleagues and department directors and the city manager to answer any questions. Public Works, so this is our really our administration and engineering function of that's budgeted out of the general fund. Much of our Public Works department that are operating under streets, water, sewer, and storm are budgeted in those respective departments, but this covers that. I should also mention in the general fund, we have a couple of other vehicle replacements budgeted through the enterprise model. So we're starting that once we bring you that contract, we put it in budget. We won't make any of those, initiate any of those orders or purchases until you consider the contract, and we can go into that in a little bit more depth. So I'm going to move into the street fund. I think this is where you'll notice we budget that TBD money. We're a little bit conservative on this. It's coming in a little over $700,000. You'll notice in 23 it was 732. It's looking on target to do about that, $725,000. So that TBD transportation benefit district dedicated sales tax is really just so important to our street maintenance and operations. I think you see it as I was driving to work this morning, everybody out after that wind we had yesterday, cleaning up the leaves so that in the next windstorm or rainstorm, things are flowing. I'm talking a little outside of what I know here, but it all works. It flows safely into the sewer system and safely on. Okay, I'll move on. So that's the street fund. The staffing levels, you'll see throughout Public Works are pretty consistent. Our capital resources fund. So just to spend a little bit of time here, because we did talk with you about this in our study session, and that is spending some of the REIT money on some projects that are allowed through real estate excise taxes. So we break this down here. We have a little bit for the refunding bond payment, but the rest is being invested in some, I'll just say, infrastructure, repairs, and maintenance on some of our city-owned buildings. So everything from and again, all of this may not be spent, but we wanted to budget what we believe to be needed. I think the estimate for that oil changes on the elevators came in a little under, so that's great news. But we have some HVAC and ductless unit replacements that need to happen. Some ADA door replacement on for this room that functions as municipal court and council chambers, and then the police department. And then we have a a generous grant from Department of Commerce for the library deck repairs, but as all things, it came in higher, and so this also funds the rest of that. So that's our REIT one.
Let me jump in, Mike. And
Sure.
Most of these projects are extend the life of our assets, right? These are intended to maintain the facilities, maintain a clean and healthy workspace and space for our general public. Some of them are mandated in their safety, like the elevator repairs that are proactive repairs that need to be done to make sure that we meet life safety issues as well. You'll see that there really isn't niceties, if you will. Here, these are basic fundamental improvements that need to be made after time. Our library, or excuse me, the HVAC unit, three of the HVAC units down at the museum are 30 years old, and one has failed completely. One's on its way out. So this addresses one, hopefully, obviously a conditioned space helps maintain that space long term. You don't have moisture infiltration, things like that. So we really want to focus on these funds on those types of projects.
And then I'll scroll down to just show you then what some of our REIT two, again, it's investing in our assets, our infrastructure, the civic center alarm panel is well past life, and then some duct cleaning. And then we have a grant for the secure parking area. But the bids came in higher, so we're adding some money to that. I think we covered that in the study session, and so some of that money is going there. That's REIT two. Our transportation benefit district, you'll hear more of this at your study session, but this is what we're budgeting for 2025. So I'll let you read that. If you have any questions, we have our public works director here and certainly answer more of that. I think many of these things you've had presented through either your acceptance of contracts that are going to happen or grants and the like. Nothing coming out of our traffic impact fees for 2025. Our capital resources, general resources, we have $23,000. So we've been budgeting this for, I think each year I'm here, but I think next year's the year it actually gets spent and we'll get that deck repaired. They're close to getting the insurance from the contractor. It's just really probably be some weather dependent time in the next 2 or 3 months when that happens, but we'll get it likely paid out early 2025. Tourism fund, I think you're going to consider that for final approval tonight. We've gone in and made these budget items for the tourism fund. So this is a dedicated fund where the revenue from lodging, hotel tax, lodging and hotel tax come into, and prepared an estimate for the lodging tax advisory committee that make sure they'll not overspend, but utilize some ending balance as well as the revenue that we're anticipating in 2025. I'm going to go on down. The bond fund is simply there to pay what we've talked about. The capital improvement fund, we have some projects budgeted. Some of these I think you've talked about, or we're showing where the expense is going to come out of. The secure parking lot, as well as some of the systemic pedestrian safety improvements. I think it's important to look here at some of that matching. You know, we really couldn't do this if it wasn't for our grants and other matching resources. So when you look at that Olympic Highway North, C Street to Wallace Nealon, that's a major reconstruction of that roadway. That $3.6 million is instrumental in making that happen. So our staff does such a good job of getting the grants to make these things realized for our community. We're adding under the capital improvement fund for parks, the crosstown trail grants. I know you've heard about those, so we didn't have those actualized in the 2024 budget. You'll hear a little bit about part of it in the supplemental we do, but this is fully bringing those grant funds in for the not only the park district, but our crosstown trail grants that are through Department of Commerce and Washington State Department of Transportation. So I'm gonna move, that covers really most of our non-enterprise funds. So that's the general fund and everything kind of related to that, where we're bringing money in to spend it on our capital project. So we talked about the water fund, the rates are in the master fee schedule. This is our operations fund for our water department. So our employees and costs for services and supplies to operate water. So this has the staffing level and then our proposed expenditures for the operation and maintenance. Then we have the capital fund where we're putting money aside sometimes over a number of years. We're transferring some in 2025 to handle these projects. These are the ones that we're anticipating to work on in 2025. So everything from what you talked about in your other meetings with the automated meter infrastructure to the well one activity that's happening next year.
We haven't set up reserves in the enterprise funds, have we? Like the general fund? We have.
In the operating funds.
Yeah.
And we make sure that those are realized in the preparation of this budget. So thank you. I should have mentioned that on all of our acquire it through council policy. We make sure that that's set aside before we use any ending fund balance towards the projects in that fiscal year. And department directors are particularly public works are very careful about that. So that's the water capital fund. Sewer fund, same thing, the operations supported by the ratepayers. That includes the staffing and all of the supplies and services that we need to operate our main plant and satellite plant. So that's summarized here in the divisions. You'll see those noted with main and satellite. Staffing and all of the related costs summarized. You know, our staffing levels stay pretty consistent. We don't add much staff. Most of this is just to operate and invest in our capital infrastructure. So for the sewer capital funds, you have the highlights here. Again, happy to answer any questions. The solid waste fund exists to close out the C Street landfill. We were notified that we have some residual grant money, so that'll extend the life on this. So we're very grateful that our staff was able to get that and that Department of Ecology is awarding it, because at some point when the balance on this fund runs out, we'll still have to do the mitigation, that testing. That'll probably have to come from the general fund. So we're estimating, I think, around 40 to 50,000 a year right now for that annual compliance to make sure that nothing's leaching out what the work we did there.
And we just cover it for 1 year so far?
Yes, it's extended actually. We thought it would end, and so they're extending it to cover due to the work of our staff, our contracts and procurement. Specialist Brooke Kiltz was able to really work with that. So that, again, it extends our runway on the amount we'll have to backfill. Storm fund, we call it storm drainage fund. It's here for the operations, so staffing, it's a smaller budget. And then I'll go down to the capital fund. I should say also in a couple of those funds, I think water and sewer, we're budgeting for some vehicle replacements through enterprise fleet also. So those are included in those operating budgets. Not, don't want to skip over that, even though you'll consider the contract next meeting. We won't, again, I want to say, we won't make any purchases until you approve that. The rest of the budget then are the funds that exist really The payroll benefits fund is where we hold our reserve for unemployment and things such as that. So we transfer into that and through deductions in payroll to make sure we have money sufficient. Auditors check us on this to make sure we're holding what's needed. We don't want it to be unnecessarily high, but certainly to pay our claims in either unemployment, L&I and that sort of thing. Our equipment maintenance and rental fund. This is the fund that departments pay into, and this will be used to replace the equipment that we can't lease through enterprise fleet management. So our larger kinds of equipment. So we'll put aside money for what you're seeing. We're going to buy next year a backhoe loader, a crack sealing machine, and a hook lift truck with accessories. Again, if you have questions about that, I'll defer it to our public works department, but those are the kinds of things that enterprise fleet couldn't pay for that we save for. So we're still making sure that we can replace that larger equipment that we have in our city fleet. Road graders, those sorts of things. I'll stop that. The rest of it then, I think I've taken you through pretty much the whole budget. I'll stop there. The library endowment fund exists. We're using it down to what is agreed to, the $100,000. The amount over that is being used towards the library debt project to help with that. So that's my presentation on the general fund. On the 2025 budget, which includes the general fund.
Gonna say you have more?
Sorry. No, I'm done with that part.
He's got more?
I know, I'm done.
All right, Donna, anyone have public testimony on this?
No, we don't, Mr. Mayor.
Forgot where I was, it's been so long.
Sorry.
All right,
Where's that?
maybe we have a reading of ordinance number 2023-0924.
Ordinance number 2023-0924. An ordinance of the city of Shelton, Washington, adopting the budget for the calendar year 2025.
Thank you, Donna. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we forward ordinance number 2023-0924, the November 19th action agenda for further consideration.
Right, comments or questions?
Just wanted to say thank you to Mike and all the hard work and the team and the city manager for keeping everything compartmentalized and straight and easy to read and understand. And for all the hard work breaking it down for us, just to show how transparent we are and what the real costs of living in a city are. So thanks a lot.
Again, thank you, Mike, and all your staff, all the department directors for all their hard work in this. Mark, our city manager. I mean, it's a lot for us to hear this, let alone work on it for what, 7 or 8 months? Solid and,
Well,
I'm sorry,
12.
12.
Yeah, we talked about.
You start talking to us about it. around
It
7 or
never,
8 months.
budget never ends. We manage it. You see the monthly budget reports, right? It looks very similar to this document. It's consistent, so you can, I think the public and council staff can digest the information a little easier. It's consistent on, a regular basis.
Absolutely appreciate it, all the hard work that everybody puts into it. Anything else? All right, we have a motion and a second to forward ordinance number 2023-0924 to November 19th action agenda for further consideration. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing is closed. We'll open another public hearing. Mike.
All right, this is for the property tax or the legal term ad valorem property tax levy for 2025. Again, we're using estimates from the county assessor. We'll get a little bit more firm numbers. They told me by the 15th, so they leave those tax rolls open as long as they can before they close them to really get an accurate amount of assessed value. So first one is for the general fund. The estimate on new construction is there, $11,761 preliminarily. So we're recommending, you saw, and we'd like to present, and we need to, by law, our need is budget based. And then this is the part of our budget, the property tax used to support our budget to provide our municipal services in the general fund. So this is the property tax levy for the general fund. Also included on here, are City of Shelton residents have voted for an EMS levy, an emergency medical services levy. That's also included here. So it collects, we're estimating in 2025 at just over $584,700. And that again, really, we collect it, and then that's an amount we pay to Central Mason Fire for EMS services. So those are the two property tax levies that we're bringing for your consideration.
Okay, so there is one side of public testimony, Donna.
No, we don't, Mr.
May I
Mayor.
read the ordinance number 2024-0924.
Ordinance number 2024-0924. An ordinance of the city of Shelton, Washington, setting the amount of the annual ad valorem taxes in the city of Shelton for calendar year 2025.
Thank you, Donna. Comments or questions? All right, do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we forward ordinance number 2024-0924 to the November 19th council meeting for the next scheduled public hearing for further consideration and to allow the public another opportunity to be heard on this ordinance under consideration.
Now, I should say, do we have any more comments or questions?
Mr. Mayor, was there a second?
Yes.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second to forward ordinance number 2024-0924, November 19th, council meeting for the next scheduled public hearing for further consideration to allow the public another opportunity to be heard on the ordinance under consideration. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing is closed and we open a regular meeting. We are now under action agenda. City Manager Mark Ziegler has information for us about the LTAC recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor and Council. We're gonna turn Mike loose here. I think he needs to rest his voice. LTAC, the Lodging Tourism Advisory Committee, has made recommendations for the 2025 tourism funds and activities in the city of Shelton. This was presented back on the 15th of October. Nothing has changed. 11 different projects totaling $97,000 for activities throughout our community in 2025 to help support tourism.
Right. Donna, anyone have public comment? And do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee's recommendations as presented.
Comments or questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee's recommendations. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, the last action item is resolution for a contract amendment, community economic development. Jay Hill has details, and he's probably online.
Is.
Hi there, just checking. Am I muted?
Nope, we hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Apologies for being remote. We're up in Seattle. My wife has surgery in the morning, so checking in from a hotel. Anyway, I'm here to talk about a proposed contract amendment. So earlier in the year, when our building official departed, we engaged Code Pros, who has done a lot of work for the city in the past. They're a contract building inspection and plan review firm. To provide limited term inspection services for us until we hired a new building official. Well, in that time, it took us just a little bit more time to hire a building official than originally expected. And also we received the highest permit volume that we've seen in the city in about a decade and a half. So anyway, they per the fee schedule in the contract, sorry, I got ahead of myself. Per the fee schedule in the contract, they receive 70% of our plan review fee as revenue, but we collect that and then have to remit that 70% to them after they invoice us for it. So we need to increase our signing authority with a contract amendment so we can pay for the rather large invoice that they just sent to us. And also cover the amount of work still outstanding that we've given to them over the course of the last couple months. We do have our new building official, Doug Woy, on staff, and he's received his residential plans examiner certification. So he's taking on a bulk of the new residential plan review and inspections, but we still had certain projects and commercial rated projects that are going out to Code Pros under the old contract. This is separate than the on-call services pool, which you approved a couple months ago. Those are new contracts, and this is the old contract, and this is for old work that was issued under that old contract. So we're requesting the increase in the spending authorization. That way we can pay the current invoice that's been submitted and a couple of invoices that we expect to close out the work. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jay. Donna, anyone have a public comment? Let's have a reading of resolution number 1352-1024.
Resolution number 1352-1024. A resolution of the Council of the City of Shelton, Washington, authorizing a contract amendment for outside building services.
Thank you, Donna. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 1352-1024 and authorize the city manager to sign the contract.
Comments or questions?
So if we pass this as a council tonight, then we can start the development on projects that have been stalled.
No, I actually called Jay on Friday, 'cause I was confused about it. All this is doing is, well, I guess, Mark, is we're authorizing to pay a bill that we already have.
Oh, we already
Yeah,
have
we
it.
had the authority wasn't high enough
Gotcha.
to pay that bill, and I was like confused as well, and I called Jay Friday, and he's explained it all to me, so I mean.
So the permits came in
Yeah.
at a higher volume than we anticipated, so
Okay.
so my signing authority is
Gotcha.
below what the invoice is, because we got a higher volume of permits. So what we're doing is we're remitting the 70% portion of the fees that we brought in to the consultant that performed the plan
Okay.
review.
So we have a lot of permits, and this is good news. In a way.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's fantastic
Wanna make
news.
that clear.
We issued over $2 million worth of valuation in permits this month. So, I mean, granted, our collection of that is much smaller, and when we're paying 70% of that to an outside reviewer, that's even smaller, but that does mean that we're increasing the valuation of the community by $2 million just in October. So.
So this little bit of money is an investment towards realizing that.
All right, any other comments or questions? Right, we have a motion, a second to approve resolution number 1352-1024 and authorize city manager to sign the contract. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are getting
Thank you.
down there. Mark, do you have a city manager report for us tonight?
Couple
Except
things.
for your Mexico, nice 2 weeks in Mexico you had.
It was warm. Yeah, enjoyed it. It was very relaxing. I'm happy to be back. I like the cool weather.
I'll trade you. I'll go.
And it's almost holiday season, right? So I wanted to recognize that it's right around the corner. Our public works crews will make their annual effort to put up Christmas lights downtown on Railroad Avenue. We are in constant contact with the downtown merchants, Northwest event organizers, Christmas down Kiwanis, the upcoming holiday activities. You look at seeing the tree maze again next door in the parking lot, the annual Christmas parade on December 7th, I believe, and the tree lighting on December 6th as well. So I really look forward to planning all that, and it's really right around the corner because the decorating and everything has to take place here in the next couple of weeks before or right after Thanksgiving, prior to the 6th and 7th. So there's a lot of dedicated people in this community working really hard on that. Really looking forward to transforming downtown into what it is each and every year.
Absolutely. I love Shelton in the holidays. I actually already started my Christmas lights yesterday, so.
Yeah. We heard a report today of an incident up at Shelton High School. First responders were there very quickly. Turned out to be a firework incident. So thank goodness, not a serious incident, but certainly we took it seriously. First responders, like I said, were there in no time and were able to determine that there was an immediate threat. So really appreciate their efforts in making their way up there and addressing that situation right away. Next Monday is Veterans Day, and we'll all be closed on Monday. So just wanted to notify council and remind the public that we'll be back on Tuesday the 12th to conduct business. Have tonight.
Any comments or questions for the city manager? All right. Does council have any new items for discussion? The boring group, Mark. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, November 19th, 2024.